I tried to do my best with Hebrew pronunciation, and I'll tell you, this is something to be amazed at, really, how the Lord helped the fellas who translated the King James Bible. Now, those guys were very humble in what they did. And, you know, I guess people have read the footnotes or the notes of the King James Bible, and they, use that to, give them reason to say, well, no, I don't believe the King James Bible, because those guys didn't believe it. Well, no, those guys were humble. What they did was quite amazing. And that they, the English language was very, very young at the time that they did it. But they translated Hebrew names into English. And they did so in a way that you could even pronounce the English in English, using English characters. And speak it basically in Hebrew. For example, you might have heard me in readings past say Ephraim, because an I is an E sound. An E is an sound. A is always And they put emphasis on the end syllable, which unlike English, where we put emphasis, we could say Ephraim, but they would say Ephraim. But isn't it neat how that, you can pronounce them in Hebrew while reading them in English? And the men of Ephraim gathered together, or themselves together, and went northward, and said unto Jephthah, Wherefore passedst thou over to fight against the children of Ammon, and didst not call us to go with thee? We will burn thine house upon thee with fire. And Jephthah said unto them, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon. And when I called you, ye delivered me not out of their hands. And when I saw that ye delivered me not, I put my life in my hands, and passed over against the children of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them unto my hand. Wherefore then are ye come up unto me this day to fight against me? Then Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead, and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead smote Ephraim, because they said, Ye Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites, and among the Manassites. And the Gileadites took the passage of Jordan before the Ephraimites. And it was so that when these Ephraimites, which were escaped, said, Let me go over, that the men of Gilead said unto him, Art thou an Ephraimite? And if he said, Nay, then they said unto him, Say now, Shibboleth, or Shibboleth. And he said, Sibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passage of Jordan, and there fell at that time of the Ephraimites 42,000. And Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then died Jephthah the Gileadite, and was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. And after him Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel. Of Bethlehem. And he had 30 sons and 30 daughters, whom he sent abroad, and took his 30 daughters from abroad for his sons. And he judged Israel 7 years. Then died Ibzan, and was buried at Bethlehem. And after him Elon, and a Zebulunite, judged Israel, and he judged Israel 10 years. And Elon, the Zebulunite, died and was buried in Aijalon, in the country of Zebulun. And after him, Abdon, the son of Hillel, Pirathonite, judged Israel. And he had 40 sons and 30 nephews that rode on 70 ass colts. And he judged Israel 8 years. And Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, died and was buried in Pirathon, in the land of Ephraim, in the mount of the Amalekites. Interesting. The Bible says, Jesus said, we are to be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. This was being wise as a serpent, but how they had them to frame the word shibboleth. And they couldn't say it right, but said siboleth. And that helped weed out the ones. Now, of course, they weren't harmless as doves back in these days, but, at God's command, and that's always the case, when they were doing things right, they were weeding out the chaff in a very brutal way, but, it was ordained of God at times. But you'll also notice at times where, sometimes it's where they were most brutal. Like I remember where Reuben and Simeon went and killed those guys after they'd had them, suggested to them that they be circumcised. Well, God was not in that, and the children of Israel suffered for it many times over because of that sin that they did against God. But it's always interesting. Remember, the Bible is totally about Jesus. Everything was set up for Jesus. But when God was not in it, of course, that's, things were done wrong, of course. Not too profound, but something to keep in mind as we read, always.